Richard,
Yann.
good morning.
Hey, good morning.
Welcome
How
to
are
the
you?
show. Thank you for joining, Richard. French Toy Rendez-Vous number 23. We are recording. Warm welcome. So we have half an hour together, Richard, and I'm very pleased to receive you and to talk to you about you. Probably for the people who don't know you, I know you know a lot of people because you're doing a lot of fairs between buyers, suppliers, thousands of people, but a lot of people would like to know about you and perhaps people who don't know you. So it will be interesting to know a bit who is Richard, what you have been doing. But first, let's talk about you, Richard, and let's talk about your childhood. Where are you born? Where you've been growing? Where are you from? What kind of toys were you playing? That kind of things.
Good thing. Well, thanks for having me on the show. Thank you, Yann. And hello to all listeners and my French friends as well. Very much so. So I grew up in the United Kingdom, in England, middle of the country.
Where?
Very modest childhood. I grew up in a place called Wolverhampton, which is, we call it the Black Country because it's where a lot of the coal was originally mined, all that area. And people would always be dirty and covered in black soot.
So this is close to Birmingham.
Yes, very close. 20 miles, 15 miles. Yeah, very close to the middle of the country. Mm-hmm. And my childhood, my parents were very working class. My mother was a secretary and my father was a school teacher. Uh-huh. And my brother, I had one sibling, my brother. He was born very sadly. He was damaged at birth because of the birth that he had, which nobody knew until he was about 5 years old when he had a stroke. And that meant that he lost the use of the left side of his body, so his left arm and left leg. So he could still walk around and he still got on with life very effectively. It also had affected his brain, so he wasn't as academically intelligent as he should have been because of this damage. And the reason I mentioned that actually is because he was my inspiration. Growing up, he would try to do everything and anything he could. He got a job when he left school at 17, and the only job he could get was either cleaning cars or cleaning toilets. Yeah. So he always got the menial jobs. But I always remember, his strong personality, and he would never give up. And that was a very early inspiration to me. So when I got into business, that was what really inspired me. And also the fact that I knew at some point he would need looking after because he would be able to fend for himself.
When you were young, Richard, when you were young, what kind of toys were you playing?
I played, well, I was absolutely there when Star Wars launched. I was 10 years old and I got the book. I read the book from cover to cover, and then I got the toys. And I remember getting Darth Vader, the Kenner toy, the little action figure with the lightsaber, which had on the end of it a very thin piece. They're always used to bend a lot and almost lost some of its realism because of that. But Star Wars was toys, which I love those. There were Action Man figures. So this was this kind of tall doll, action doll, army doll, toy soldiers. I love toy soldiers. There was a rocket toy, I remember, watching one Christmas TV commercial came on.
Yeah.
And it had this tube, about 3 foot long tube, 2 to 3 inches in diameter. And it was a tube on top of a tube, so concentric. And on the top of that, it had a rocket head. And within the rocket head, it had a parachute. And the idea was that you would push the two tubes together to compress the air inside, and this would propel the head of the rocket skywards. And it was called Thunder Rocket. And I remember, I'm going to sound really awful now. I'm going to do the jingle. And it was Thunder Rocket, Thunder Rocket. And I remember this jingle stuck in my mind. But for Christmas, that's what I wanted. Christmas Day came. I got this rocket, took it out in the back garden, and it said, "This will fly 100 feet in the air. So I assembled it. My 9-year-old, 8-year-old self assembled it. And then I went to try it. And the rocket head just dropped off the top of the tube. It didn't fly skywards. And there was nothing that I could do to get this thing to fly. It wouldn't work. My dad tried it. It was useless. So that was a disappointing side to my experience in toys. And I had a couple of others that I recall. And as I grew up, I remembered that immediate disappointment. But when you got a toy that was amazing, like the Star Wars figures, and you could then role play, you could, reenact scenes from the films. Those moments, they stay with you forever. They're like they indelibly imprint that memory in your mind. So even into adulthood, you can still remember that experience and that feeling. And that's what I like to do with Wow stuff. When we create toys, I want to bring back. I want to give those kids those wow moments that they'll remember when they're much older.
Let's talk about that after. We will go towards that.
Sure thing.
So you are young. You are growing in near Birmingham. You're a teenager. You're doing some studies. And what do you do? What do you study? Where are you?
So I'm at school, a secondary school in the middle of Wolverhampton. That I didn't get into grammar. I sat in the UK. We have this thing called the 11 plus, and you sit this, and if you pass it, or if you get a high mark, you get a scholarship automatically to grammar. But they only take one child per school. Myself and my best friend both scored the same result, so we had to go into school on a Saturday morning at 11 years old, and we had to resit another test to decide which of us was going to go to grammar school. I lost. He won. He went to grammar. I went to this other secondary school, normal secondary school. And, throughout my 7-8 years, from the age of 10 to 17, 18 years old, I enjoyed school, but I was rubbish. I was really poor. I didn't realize I'd got dyslexia. And in those days, dyslexia wasn't something they tested you for. I wouldn't say it was severe. My whole family has got dyslexia. My children have got it a lot worse than I have. But it just held me back a little bit. And then there's something that I never share. I'm going to tell you something that I've never shared before with anybody, I don't think. I also had quite poor eyesight. And I was embarrassed about wearing glasses, spectacles, at that age, with girls around, I wanted to be this cooler kid.
You're a teenager.
So I couldn't see the blackboard when the teacher was writing things on the blackboard, as we call it, to teach the class things. And yet, because I was cool, I wanted to sit at the back of the class with all the cool kids. So I couldn't see the blackboard. So I couldn't learn anything because I couldn't read anything. So I used to copy from my friend. So the things you do when you're a kid. And then I left school 18, 19 years old, worked in a sales office. Again, because I got no qualifications, I took whatever I could get. And they put me in an office, and it was a strange thing. They just let me do whatever I wanted to do. I got on well again with the people there. And I thought to myself very quickly, if I don't add value in what I'm doing, they are probably going to fire me. They're going to get rid of me. So common sense kicked in. And I started getting on the phone and making sales calls. So I started doing calls out to their customers when in the past, they'd only allowed calls to come in. They never had a telephone sales business. So that was quite successful. And through that, I got another company approached me because I was selling to them. And they said, we like your attitude. Do you want to come for an interview for a job? And the job was a sales rep.
Yes.
So this was company car. I'm now 20 years old. And I get a company car. So I take the job, company car. And I've never driven outside of my hometown before. So now I'm having to drive 100 miles, 300 miles a day outside of my hometown of Wolverhampton, selling binoculars telescopes, so optical products. That business grew. We then took in cameras. So I was selling camera equipment, video. Do you remember the days of camcorders? You know, those little Sony little handy cams, and you could create your own videos. Of course, now we have our mobile phones to do that. And so we were the very first company, I think, in the UK to sell all the video accessories. So the tripods, the lenses, the lights, the bags, everything that you could sell alongside those cameras. And business went really well. I was promoted to a top sales position. And then at 23, they gave me a small company to run within this group of companies that I worked for. And I was out of my depth a little bit. But what I decided to do, because of no academic qualifications, I decided to read all about marketing and study it in my spare time.
Yes.
And what I learned was kind of why people buy things, the principles of advertising. And I started to apply those to this business division that I'd been given. And sales took off. It was remarkable. And because this small company that they gave me was in a niche industry, that industry, it was actually shooting sports products. And in the UK, the shooting sports industry is not huge. And it's full of hobbyist people who probably built their business because they love the sport of shooting. So they weren't necessarily business people. So I was now a business person and I was a hobbyist. So I understood the industry. So combining those two attributes helped the business really, really rocket forward. And it became very successful. After 3 years, I left to set up my first company.
Okay, so we are 20. You are 20 something. If I remember correctly, Richard, you were in sport, right?
Yeah. So I was in shooting sports, and I was also a karate student. So I was a black belt at karate, which I thoroughly enjoyed. I got a cap for England in that. But target shooting was my hobby and my interest, and I became a world champion shooter.
Okay, this is your link to the sport. Okay, I understand. Okay.
Yes, that's right.
All right. So I understand you are not doing studies, but you're a clever guy. You're having top selling productions quite quickly. You're young. You are starting to read books to have some culture and in marketing. And then when is the first step in the toy business?
That came almost by chance. So I'd built my first company and sold it. So in a non-related industry, it was in the shooting sports industry.
Okay.
And then from there, I went into e-commerce. This would be about 1998. In America, e-commerce, selling products via websites, was really taking off. Amazon was really emerging as a powerhouse in 1998 in America. And I could see this happening over here in the UK and Europe. So I wanted to get in on the action. So I set up an e-commerce business, a website, using the funds from the sale of my previous business, because I loved business. I now knew I loved business and I was pretty good at it. So I set up an e-commerce business selling gifts, gadgets, and big boys' toys. And so, for example, I imported the Lazy Boy armchair, which was a big chair that you sit in your lounge or your living room, and you recline, you relax. It's got motors in it, and it was made famous by the TV sitcom series in America called Friends with Joey, who would always sit in this Lazy Boy armchair. So I imported these, and I became the biggest importer of these products, and I was selling them on the website. And I would honestly say we never actually made any real profit in that business. It grew very strongly, but we had to reinvest all the time to keep that growth. Because it's okay having a website, but people have got to know that you exist. So you had to spend a lot of money on advertising to drive people to the website. And we did a lot of catalogs. During that period, we got toy companies approaching us saying, we normally sell our toys to toy retailers, but we noticed you're selling products that are really toys, but you're selling them to adults. Would you like to have a go with our toys? And there were things like the Robo Sapien from Wow. Do you remember that?
Oh, yes.
I was I was the first company to grab that. So Character Options, fabulous company, toy business. Yeah, you remember them? And they're very strong now, Character Options. So they were the importer. So I worked with them and I got the product straight away onto our website, into our PR. And I think I sold 10,000 of those very, very quickly. So we knew we could sell toys, but for an older age group. So that was probably my first experience selling toys, but I was selling them to consumers. So I was, as they call it in our business, B2C, business to consumer. So at this point, I wasn't doing business to business.
Yeah, I understand. Okay, so this is where you're going to start with Wow stuff? Just after that?
Yeah, so then that business, as I say, never really made any profit. But I started to see a lot of toys. I started to get a feel for the toy business and also the gifts business, which was very closely aligned. Gifts being lower price points, products that are bought by the wife for the husband or the husband for the wife. That's like those products. And some of them are a bit toyetic. So during that period, I thought, okay, I'm not making money on this business. I'd built a fantastic website and a great technology platform. So I sold all of that business and I set up Wow Stuff. And the Wow Stuff business was a gifts business predominantly. We realized that we could import the products directly from China. We could put our own twist on those products and sell them to retailers, like in the UK, the big grocers. So the equivalent of Carrefour, so for us in the UK, it would be Sainsbury's, Argos, Asda, Tesco. So we also at this point thought we've got good ideas for gifts, but there needs to be another angle. There needs to be something more compelling than just a decent or a nice quality gift. So that's when we started looking at licenses. And this would be about 2007, 2006. And we approached the Science Museum in London, which was very well known in the UK. Lots of tourists and lots of kids in coaches from schools coming down to the Science Museum. And it got quite a prestigious name. So we worked with those guys and we put the Science Museum brand onto the gifts that we were importing. And they sold phenomenal volumes in Sainsbury's, in Argos. I mean, one product would sell 60, 70,000 pieces. We had a dozen products. So we were selling well over 1 million pieces per customer of these gifts. The company at this point was myself and 2 other co-founders. So I put the money in to finance the business and I backed really 2 very clever product inventors. They were scientists by academia. So their background was as scientists, but they were inventors. They loved creating new products. And then we brought in a few other people who were administrators and financial people. So by 2008, 2009, we had this nice little gifts business with about 8 or 9 people in there doing a turnover of about $6 or $7 million, say 5 million euros, something like that. And it was profitable. And then my colleague said to me, the toy business, that you sort of crossed over into at your old company looks quite attractive. It's a big industry, much bigger than gifts. We should get into that. So we acquired a small company that was also really 2 scientists, 2 more scientists to add to our 2 scientists who I was already in partnership with. So we bought this company because they got some great toy ideas. And the first product we launched was a robotic monkey. So it stood about a foot tall and it sat on your shoulder with a Velcro strap, a little remote control handset, and it was called Dave. We sold them in the UK. We launched it, and within the first year, we sold 200,000 pieces, and it was a £30, €35 product. So we thought, wow, this is the toy industry. Look how easy it is. How wrong were we? How wrong were we? So we sold well that first year, and then we realized toys is hard. Toys is difficult. You need something really special. You need your own angle. You need something unique all of the time, not just in the first year. So we learned, you have to keep coming up with hits before you can have the chance of even creating a category or a subcategory, which is very, very difficult.
Yes.
The second year, we came up with another robot that had touch sensors all over it. It looked like two yellow tennis balls. So if you can imagine in your mind's eye, two yellow tennis balls, one stuck on top of the other. And it sat on a platform, a tubular platform, full of electronics. It had two dots for eyes. So the eyes were just two dots on the top of the top tennis ball and a dot for the nose. It was called My Keeper, and it was based on a research robot that studied autism in children, created by a scientist also in America. And we'd made this thing into a toy. We launched it with Toys R Us. It was their fastest ever selling toy online. So they'd never had a toy sell so well. But that was because in those days, people didn't understand the power of social media so well. But this research scientist had his product all over YouTube, and it had a massive following. So when we launched, there was a lot of people that already knew about it. And when we did a little bit of PR, they all then bought the toy version. So that's why it sold so well. And then the third year, we had air swimmers, which was a helium-filled balloon. So if you can imagine a balloon in the shape of a shark or in the shape of a fish, a clownfish. And it was 4 or 5 feet long, 3 feet wide. So it's a massive balloon, shape of a shark, and the tail was designed to waggle using a remote control handset. Because it was filled with helium, it would float, and you could then fly it through the air. It was an American inventor who actually came up with the idea, but they couldn't get it to work properly. So our scientists took hold of it, and we developed it further. We got the patents for it. We paid him a royalty, but we effectively took charge of it and took ownership of that product. And we sold 500,000 pieces very quickly.
So when did you start to really go with a lot of licenses in your range? Was it from the beginning?
It was at the beginning in gifts, but when we went into toys, we put the licenses on hold.
Yeah.
And so we just created our own IP. And then we realized we didn't have the distribution structure to maximize the sales potential. So, for example, that huge air swimmers shark, the name was called air swimmers shark and air swimmers clownfish. Even though we sold 500,000, they got copied really quickly. And then Disney said to us, this was probably the start of those conversations in licensing. Disney said, this would make a fantastic Nemo. And then we started to understand how that whole licensing model works in toys. And it's, quite a big royalty rate compared to the royalties that we were paying in gifts. We were paying half the percentage royalties when we were in gifts business. So we shied away from that, to be honest, for the first year or two. And this was about 2012, 2013. And then we started to reconsider it because something huge happened. Something terrible happened. It was 2012, 2013. The air swimmers product sold 500,000 pieces. We were a $30 million business from being a $15 million business. So we doubled in size. And then somebody said, have you seen what's going on at retail with your products? And everybody was copying the air swimmers product. They were flooding in from China. They were everywhere. We couldn't, and because I had made quite a lot of money previously in selling my businesses, 2 businesses at this point I'd sold and built, I thought, this is unfair. I'm going to challenge all of this. So I'll get my lawyers because because I'd always thought everything should be fair. Everybody's nice. And I couldn't believe this. So I've got the lawyers in and we started issuing these cease and desist letters to everybody. And I spent a small fortune. And to cut a very long story short, it took us another 8 years, 2017, 18, maybe even 19, I think, actually, 2019, before finally our patents were upheld and we won the cases. Okay. But by that time, everybody had gone away or closed shop or gone out of business, all these copiers, the copycats, you couldn't find me. So we got back very little money. It was what they call a Pyrrhic victory, So yes, we won, but, and I suppose we showed that we would fight for our own IP, that if people did copy us, so it was a marketing thing more than anything else, I suppose, in the end. But it was a bit of a distraction as well.
Okay, so let's go to those years now, Richard. For a few years ago, you invented a new category, which is called Puppytronic. That's something new that you have invented with this dinosaur, and now you have the Stitch. So explain us what's going on with that.
So over the 10 or 12 or 13 years then we've been in toys, what we noticed, what we learned was if you can get a toy that's a hit, it's great, but it's a 1 or a 2 year thing. You can get a toy that can create a new category that you can then develop. That's a whole different kettle of fish, as we call it. So that's a new opportunity, a big opportunity, and a long-term opportunity. And that's what happened here. So in 2021, 22, we worked with Universal on their fantastic Jurassic World franchise. And we created a product called Real FX, which is our trademark.
Yeah.
Jurassic World Baby Blue. And it was a puppet with electronics, puppet and animatronics. And it was a fake glove that you looked like you had your hand underneath a baby dinosaur, and it was resting on top, and you've got controls on the inside that brought it to life. It was extraordinary. It was a Walmart bestseller. It blew out the doors. It was fabulous, but it was very high priced. It was like 99 euros and so on, but it did well. And that was the start of Puppytronics. So we didn't realize at this point we were onto a new category, but we just went back to other licensors, started to look at their characters and think, could we also bring animatronics, the puppets, and bring those characters to life? So then we started working with Disney.
Yeah.
And we looked at Stitch. This is before Stitch really blew up as it has done in the last year or two. So this is 3 years ago. So sort of in parallel with having developed the dinosaur. And we started working on Stitch. And we wanted something that looked real, felt real, sounded real. So that was the positioning of Puppytronics. Looks real, feels real, sounds real. And Real Effects is the flagship of anything we do in our business. Real Effects represents the flagship halo toy in a licensed brand. So we took Stitch and we said, look, we want to create the very best Stitch. And we think we can bring it to life. And we've known Disney now for a long time and a lot of these licensors. Very good to work with. And we set about building the Puppytronic that's really opened everything up as a category. Yeah. We launched it June of this year, 2024.
Yeah.
And it's beaten everybody's expectations. I mean, it's a real wow because it does really come to life in your hands. And it's just remarkable. When you see it on a video, if you look at it on TikTok or YouTube or any other social media, it looks like it's alive. And it's captured everybody's imagination.
Yeah, you had a lot of influence on that, on all the channels, all the social media. So it's good for you. So I believe it's a big success for you for this Christmas. At least you found a lot of customers worldwide.
Yeah, so it opens doors to many more customers. It reasserts that we're hopefully, one of the best at innovation, which is what we love doing, and creating those wow moments. So our design development team now is quite big. It's the biggest part of our business, the people that search for that wow. So what they've now done is they've now doubled down on Puppytronics. So we have a whole range of Puppytronics coming through at different price points to expand that category. and it really, the reaction from our customers at these recent trade fairs has been like nothing I've ever seen. So we've had some wow products always, it's what we do. But the reaction to this is very different. This they recognize as a category.
Yeah, you found the right combination between what you have invented and the licenses. So good job. Congratulations for that. And it's fantastic for all stuff. To end the show, Richard, I would like to talk about France with you and to know a bit what do you know about us? What do you like France? Or do you go over? Or what do you do?
I don't go over enough. Yeah, it's where I'm going to retire to.
Yeah, you want to retire there?
No, I will never retire. I won't retire because I know it seems a bit of an odd thing to say, but business is in my blood and the toy industry is in my blood now. It's you hear it quite often that people who come in this industry don't go out this industry. I do love it, and I don't want to stop really. So I want to continue, and I've got a great team that. They run the business. The Wow is in their DNA. Yeah. In France, we've tried to sell in France, as you know, so often, and we do business in France, and we love business in France. And we have now, because really of Puppetronics, I suppose, we've now forged some fantastic direct-to-retail relationships. With the real big toy retailers. So we've got some lovely, lovely business there, and it can be. We are scratching the surface of business opportunity in France. I think we are doing about 25 to 30% of our potential in France. So in the UK, we're doing about 70% of our potential. Yeah. In the US, we're doing 10% of our potential, maybe 15%, and Germany, we're doing probably 20% of our potential. So there's great opportunity for growth. And France, Germany, and a bit more in the UK.
Yeah, the three big ones,
where we can grow. Yeah, that's where we can grow.
And do you like going to France, Richard?
Oh, of course.
Where do you like to go?
How can you not? I don't go there often enough. I mean, my wife here's a bit of a left of field thing. When I was dating my wife-to-be, when she was my girlfriend, we split up. And to get back together, she was working and she saved up some money. And 5 or 6 weeks after we'd split up, she sent me a note with some tickets, 2 tickets to France, to Paris, to stay at a hotel. The Hotel Honoré on the Rue d'Honoré. I think I'm probably pronouncing that incorrectly. Your French listeners will know. And it was wonderful. We went to the Moulin Rouge and we spent 3 days in Paris, which will be unforgettable. But I've been to other places. I remember we went to just on the other side of the Channel Crossing. We stayed in a city, the name escapes me for a moment, but we stayed in a hotel for a sales meeting. This would be going back now 30 years ago in the company that I managed. So that was a wonderful experience. I remember it was a spa. I remember, I was 23 years old, 24 perhaps, and there was about 15 of us from the company, all in our bathing trunks, our swimming costumes, having a sales meeting in a great big spa.
Very good, Richard. Yeah. Okay, Richard. So this is the end of the show, and thank you so much for this conversation. It was nice to talk to you, and all the best for Christmas.
Thank you, Jan. Thank you. Yeah, and listen, all the best to you, and all the best to all of your listeners for Christmas, and everybody in the toy industry. Because one thing that I've seen over these years, this is a wonderful industry, but it's hard industry. It's tough, and those moments when it's going well, fantastic. But when it's not, very difficult. So my heart goes out to anybody suffering at the moment, and my wishes are that things will always get better.
Okay, Richard. Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you. Yeah.
See you soon.
God bless.
See you
soon.
Ciao.